Greetings, everyone. P. Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of Ranking the Albums. And in the co-captain's chair once again, Mr. Grant Arthur from the Contrarians and Grant's Rock Warehouse. What's happening, my friend?
Hey, good. I've got to move from all the confetti. Yeah.
That's
Hi,
right.
how
That's
are you?
right.
Nice to be here today.
Yeah. Grant and I, you think that we just turned on the play button and here we go, but he and I have been shooting the shit for close to a half an hour already. So we are well lubricated and ready to talk. And interesting concept today and next week's show. We're doing another one together next week, and we're talking about a couple of bands that don't have big catalogs at all. Some of you might be saying, Pete, Grant, Rossington Collins Band, they only had two albums. How the hell can you pull out a ranking show with only two albums? Well, as Grant and I always say, who's talking Rossington Collins Band, right? I mean, this is a very cool band that came out of the ashes of Leonard Skinner. Interesting, very kind of ominous and emotional, tragic thing that happened in the late 70s. And you've got these surviving members who said, hey, what, we want to still play music. We think we're ready to go back and do it, but we know that Leonard Skinner can't continue because we lost some of our brothers, right? So the Rossington Collins Band was born. Of course, we've got Gary Rossington, we've got Mr. Alan Collins on guitars. They brought in Barry Lee Hardwood on guitars and vocals. So they're continuing with the three-prong attack. You got Billy Powell on keyboards from Leonard Skinner. You got Leon Wilkeson on bass guitar from Leonard Skinner, right? So all these guys, they got over their injuries because they were all injured pretty bad. Some of them, a couple of them in the hospital for quite a long time. Of course, we lost Steve Gaines and we lost his sister and we lost, of course, Mr. Van Zant in that horrific plane crash and a few other people. But on board also, they brought in Dale Krantz on lead vocals, who is secret weapon here, and Derek Hess on drums and percussion. So big band, kind of like the Skinner band, right? You got what, seven people in this band. Uh, Southern rock, obviously, but only two records. And we saw the first one, Anytime, Anyplace, Anywhere, come out in 1980. And then very quickly in 1981, they shot out This Is the Way. And then they went away. This is the way, and then they went away, right? It was kind of maybe not destined to last too long. I don't know. What do you think, Grant? I think the world was still ready for more Southern rock because that first album did pretty well. You had bands like 38 Special and Molly Hatchet still bringing in pretty big business around this time.
Well, and 38 Special, as you mentioned, just are kind of carrying on. I mean, obviously 38 Special got big in the 80s,
Yeah.
but even their older stuff, much more Southern rock as they progress. But yeah, people didn't have enough of this stuff. And when I listened to the Rossington Collins Band, I listened to this first record, it picks up right where Leonard Skinner left off.
Yep.
Of course, you don't have Donnie in the band, but you've got Dale Krantz, who is a powerhouse. Let me leave it at that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. She is. She's really something else. And again, if you like that, like bluesy Janis Joplin style, sort of, that's kind of where she's coming from. And she is, I mean, there's a lot of great things about the debut album, which we'll talk about momentarily, but she's definitely one of them. And she's got the voice made for radio. She's got the voice made for stadiums, that sort of thing. I mean, this is one of those great, great debut albums that like people don't talk about enough, and including myself. I'm doing this whole favorite debut albums show all month long every morning here, and anytime, any place, anywhere didn't quite make my cut, but it's a great one. It's a really good one. And like I said, This Is the Way was the follow-up, and that would prove to be the final one. And all sorts of reasons maybe why this band didn't get bigger or didn't last longer. But I guess when you look back on it, and maybe, and most of them are gone, right? We can't even ask them, but I wonder if the expectations and the weight of the Leonard Skinner legacy just weighed a little bit too hard on them. Kind of looking back as maybe why this band didn't last any longer. I mean, that's got to be hard, right? To
well,
kind
I
of,
think a lot of it, I think, had to do with Alan Collins because, they splintered off, after they did the second album. Alan Collins did the Alan Collins Band, and then Gary Rossington and Gail went and did Grant. I did Rossington,
yeah,
but Alan took basically this band with him.
yeah,
And the Rossington band had a totally different lineup. I
yeah,
mean, that's a whole other show,
yeah,
but they splintered off. But Alan Collins was a wild man. had a
Yeah.
lot of issues. He eventually became paralyzed from an auto accident. He lived life. He partied hard. I mean, this band, I think, as he progressed, was bound to, you know, just fall apart because it's just. I don't think he had that much to do with that second album. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that has a lot to do with why they just kind of folded it and just split off. Was Alan wasn't holding up his end.
Yeah, you're probably right. I mean, it's kind of sounds hastily put together. The songwriting
Mhm.
isn't quite as good. There's some, it got lambasted big time when it first was released, and it didn't sell barely anything, especially compared to the debut. And I think a lot of us back then were kind of like, yeah, it's a really subpar album. It sucks, blah, blah, blah. But, in revisiting it to do this assignment, I think it's a bit better than many of us thought it was way back then. I think it gets a lot of shit, and maybe it's not all that bad. The problem is it doesn't quite hold up to the debut. The debut is really, really good. So
Yeah.
and that's the thing, right? It's like you got the one bright shining star, and this one is like, okay, it's pretty good, but pretty good doesn't quite match up to that debut. And
Yeah,
that's
they only came out like a year apart, so I'm wondering if they needed more time on the material because I don't really see any real weak material on any time, any place, anywhere.
no,
To me, when I listen to that record, it seems more like an album where the follow-up record seems more like a collection of songs. There's a lot of different variety on it. I mean,
yeah,
we've got a cappella tracks, we'll get there, but
yeah.
it doesn't, it just seems like a collection of songs as opposed to an album.
Yeah, yeah. So, no surprise here. Spoiler alert. You already obviously know how we're going to rank these, right? The debut is obviously number one, and this is the way the follow-up is number two. But we're going to talk about each album a little bit. And for those who have never heard these records, I think they're both worth your time. And if you can get the BGO release that we both just
Oh,
showed, you get both of them in one set. Can't beat that. Can't beat that. Remaster, it sounds great. Lots of cool liner notes and photographs and things like that. So that's the way to get
that's the way to get it.
yeah, yeah. So Grant, why don't you kick us off and let's talk a little bit about This Is the Way first, and then we'll talk about the debut.
Okay. All right. This is the way. Okay. Now, you might think about this did hit the Billboard 200. It got up to number 24. It did not perform as well as the debut. But, and like I said, but when I'm listening to this, it seems like a collection of songs, not so much an album. But I will give it some props. Gotta Get It Straight leads off the album. It kicks off right where the debut leaves.
Yeah,
Slide guitar, you got the honky tonk piano from Billy. The middle eight on this track really kicks ass, and it leads into a nice solo from Billy Powell. When I listen to that, I'm thinking, hey, so far so good.
yeah.
Um,
It's Southern Boogie, man, and it's
it's
just
Southern Boogie,
yeah,
but it could have fit on. It could have been on the other album, as far
yeah,
as I'm concerned. Dale sounds great. Everything sounds great. Okay. The next song is a ballad. Tashwana. It kind of reminds me of Simple Man. It's like a clone of Simple Man. Now, is that good or bad? Well, you can decide that. And I wrote in my notes, I said, Dale can sing just about anything.
yeah.
And I think a lot of this record, I don't know, but I'm listening to the lyrics. It's talking about guns and death. And is it about Ronnie Van Zant? I don't know. I don't know what it's about. But it's okay, but it's a ballad. There's really not any ballads on the other record as far as I can remember.
Now there's
Um,
slower blues things
yeah,
going
three
on.
times as bad as a slow blues ballad,
Yeah,
but it's a little bit different. But Tashwanda, it's fine. It's okay. Gonna miss it when it's gone. Well, are they talking about the band? Are they talking about I don't know what they're talking about.
yeah.
To me, when I hear this, this is the obvious single from the record. Um, uh, but I
Good.
keep thinking when I'm listening to
Catchy.
this, I think it's okay,
It's missing
but
some fire for me,
it's missing some fire, Pete.
but it's catchy because
It's
I agree with
catchy.
I agree with you. They could have used this as a single, but there's a lot of fire on that first album. This song is it's missing a little
It
something.
If you listen to Dale's vocals on this, she's a lot more subdued than she was on the debut.
Yeah,
But I did write in my notes here. I think it sounds fine musically. These guys are great players,
yeah, oh yeah.
but I think there's something missing. Is it the mix? Is it the quality of the songwriting? It might be the songs, but man, they're still playing using all eight cylinders. I'm just saying that. But the sparkle is gone.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It's not quite as engaging. I wrote in my notes, I know this sounds like a single, but it almost sounds like they're going through the motions. You know, it's hard to put my finger on, but it's what I'm going to go with. Next song is Pine Box, Barry Harwood. And I would say that Barry Harwood on this record, his songs, I don't really have an issue with them. I think that his songs on this album tend to stand out. This is an a cappella track. And I don't know if they're trying to go for that Eagles thing. They can sing, it's fine.
100% sounds like the Eagles to me.
Sounds like the Eagles. I'm not sure if Rossington Collins knows where to go at this point.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's fine, but I think what Barry brings to the table as far as songwriting, I think he's kind of picking up the slack. Now, is the slack because of Alan Collins? I don't know, but something's off. Fancy ideas, cool riff, layered guitars, Harwood vocal. He sounds great. It reminds me of an Allman Brothers track.
Yeah.
I'm good with that. Don't Stop Me Down, Krantz Rossington song. You'll find like on the Rossington album, all Dale and Gary wrote all the songs on that. They do a lot of co-writing on here. It's an okay killer drum intro. It's very honky tonk. But then I wrote my notes. I'm going, there's just something about the mix and the vocals. Are the vocals too up front? I don't know. Something's off. But you kind of get, I could keep going. Seems like every day. Guitars on that track are screaming out of the gate. I'm
Oh,
going,
yeah.
okay, I'm down. Heaviest guitar on the album. But then I wrote on my notes, Dale sounds a bit more subdued.
And where's
Killer
the hook?
solo,
Where's the
huh?
hook in this? Where's the hook
Where's
in
the
this?
hook? The
Right?
first album has hooks. There's not any real hooks. They're going through the motions. I could keep going. I think you understand what I'm saying. I don't know. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I mean, I find that most of these songs, even the ones that I really like a lot, they're missing that little pixie dust, that little magic dust that seemed to be sprinkled upon the entire first album, like every single song. There's some good stuff here. I mean, I like Seems Like Every Day. I think it's trying really hard to be really rocking. The guitars are roaring on it. Billy's
Mhm.
organ is really sounding good. Dale sounds good. Just, I don't know, that chorus just doesn't really grab me. Um, but the guitars are on fire. I really like it. I'm Free Today is really bland. There really wasn't any bland stuff on that first album.
They
Uh,
kind of sound like a glorified bar band on this record.
yeah, it's just there, right? I mean, it's just this should we should not get generic Southern rock from this group of people, right?
No.
And that's what there's some stuff on here that's just kind of generic. Next Phone Call, lyrics are kind of dumb, but it's pretty rocking. There's some nasty, nasty guitars. I also think Means Nothing to You is pretty pedestrian as a closer. It's just not really memorable. But there's some, I think Fancy Ideas is terrific. I think Gotta Get It Straight is terrific. Um, I kind of like Gonna Miss It When It's Gone, but again, it's missing that catchy hook. I think I think overall there's some really good songs here. There's a couple of stinkers for me. Not stinkers. A couple of like just
I don't think there's really anything bad.
no, it's just there's a couple unmemorable songs that I think, unfortunately, the standards that they set by that debut album, I think there were expectations. And I just think that this, like you said, it sounds like a band somewhat going through the motions, like they're running on fumes like a year and a half into their existence. And maybe, these albums came out like so quickly. And,
Yeah,
and maybe they just didn't have enough time to really work with this stuff. I don't know. Maybe the label was just like pounding on to get another album out. I mean, they're basically probably, I mean, I wonder how much of this was written on the road for that first tour and they
probably
just
all of it.
put shit together. But in saying all that, like this album got savaged when it first got released by the press and the critics. In revisiting it again, I hadn't heard this in a while. I listened to the debut a lot. I hadn't heard this album in quite a while. I don't think it's as bad as it was made out to be. I still think there's plenty of good material here. What do we got? 10 tracks on here.
Mhm.
Five or six are actually very good. There's a couple that are just kind of like, they're okay, right? So I think it's not an awful album. It's just not a great album. And unfortunately, that debut is to me a great album. And I think one of the underrated gems in all of Southern rock. So yeah, not bad.
Mhm.
If you've never heard This Is the Way, it's a pretty good listen.
Well, if you're going to get it, you might as well get this too
Yeah,
first.
and you'll have it. And you
You'll
can
have it.
revisit, you can just take out the songs you like, if you're making putting it on a, whatever in your digital or however you do this sort of thing. Um, it's just not every song is a home run like the debut. But like I said, even if half the songs are pretty damn good, that makes it a worthwhile listen to me. But it's not awful by any means. Not
No.
it's just it's a good album as opposed to a really great album, which
But if I was going to rate it out of five, I would give it a 3 out of 5. It's just right in the
that's
middle.
fair. Yeah, I would say three is perfectly good because half the songs are pretty damn good. The other half, so 3 out of 5. Yeah, it's an average to good album to me. It's not a
Yeah.
terrible album by any means. So for all the critics who basically gave this a 1 out of 5 or or a half a star or
Yeah,
whatever
that's
the
not
heck is,
fair.
it's not fair and it's not that bad at all. But it's not the debut. It's not the debut.
Yeah. They sound tired.
Yeah, surprisingly. You got to wonder like what that year on the road was like for them. But honestly, Grant, I mean, let's talk on human terms here. Based on what half of this band went through just a few short
Mhm.
years beforehand,
Mhm.
can you blame them? They struck lightning in a bottle with that debut album, but these guys probably should have all been dead
Yeah.
in that plane crash. And luckily they escaped with their lives. And a few of them were in rehab and in hospitals for months and months and
Months.
months and months and months on end. So the fact that they were able to do what they did on the debut, and you mentioned Alan Collins before. I mean, it's well known he had lots of demons and stuff that he was dealing with. I can't imagine walking out of that plane, that's on fire and a couple of your bandmates are gone and you're maybe stuck in a hospital for 6, 8 months after that. How does that not fuck with you, like in a horrible way, right, going forward?
Mhm.
So, I- you know, is it surprising what happened to this band? Yeah, maybe not, maybe not. I mean, but I
A
think that
lot
they
of
got a
trauma.
great first album out of all that tragedy. That's something to be proud of, even if the band splintered not that long after that. I don't know.
Well, you listen to that first album. I mean, it did okay. Got on the Billboard 200, got up to number 13. It
Yeah,
was gold.
yeah,
None of these records turned platinum, but I think people were glad to see them back. And I think they recognized that, oh, well, we don't have Skinnerd, but we've got something pretty close.
pretty damn
Because when
close.
I listened to the debut, I wrote like prime time, first track. I wrote picks up right where Leonard Skinner left off. It's
Yeah,
like they didn't skip a beat. You don't have Donnie, you've got Dale, but she, like you said, crafted right out of that Janis Joplin vein. She probably can sing anything you can throw at her, and she just smokes and she feels inspired. The whole band on this first record are glad to be back.
yeah,
There is a sparkle, there is a shimmer, there is inspiration.
yeah,
They've had time to write songs. They've all went through rehab. They're all in good shape, so supposedly. Who knows? It's rock and roll. But
yeah.
the songs are here, the melodies are here. Go ahead.
I was gonna say if you put prime time on on the last Skinner album before the crash,
Yeah.
I could absolutely see Ronnie singing it. Because the smoking guitars are there, the honky tonk piano from Billy's there. It's got the vibe, it's got the groove. It's just all it's really missing is Ronnie Van Zant. That's it. And Dale is steps in and just knocks it out of the park. It's just for anybody who loves those handful of early Skinner albums, this is the next in line, just without Steve Gaines and Ronnie Van Zant. And with Dale Krantz on vocals. That's really what
Yeah.
it's just. Yeah. It's,
Yeah. Highly recommend this.
uh,
It's a good listen. They sound great. They're playing, man, the guitars on Primetime are on fire. I mean, everybody's playing. Billy Powell on these records, even on the second album, Billy Powell is just a machine.
yeah.
I'd love to listen to him play. I could listen to him for hours, but he's still on both of these records. He's on fire. And the guitars are always good with Skinner.
Yeah.
Look at the pedigree. These guys are good musicians. So it just sounds when I start listening to this track, I listen to Primetime, I'm going, hallelujah. They're glad to be back. Top notch. three times as bad as the second track. It's a slow blues ballad. I find it kind of funny that they have, I'm not trying to say it's good or bad, but if I'm putting an album together and I'm looking at sequencing, I don't know if I'd put a slow song as the second song.
No,
I probably would put it more into the
fourth or
lineup,
fifth, like right around the middle. Yeah.
but that's okay. I'll take
Still
what I can get
a great
because we've
song.
got pretty much Leonard Skinner back to some degree. Because, like we said, slow blues ballad. And I wrote on here, Dale is a mix. When I listen to this, she sounds like a mix of James Brown and Janis Joplin.
Yep.
There is some James Brown in her. He must have listened to James Brown because I totally hear it. We've got Hammond organ, which is predominant. It's drenched with feeling and emotion, and you've got more of that beautiful piano from Billy.
Yep.
I'm in. Now, the third track, which is what they used to play, well, this came out in 1980. This was all over, well, FM rock radio, classic
Oh yeah.
rock radio. I don't know if they called it classic rock in 1980, but FM rock radio, they used to play Don't Misunderstand Me all the time.
Oh yeah.
And then it just disappeared. Um, Great single, great interplay between Krantz and Harwood. They sound good together. It's catchy, it's memorable. I'll go on record saying it's as good as anything Leonard Skinner did. There's great riffs. The middle section on this track, almost proggy, goes to another level. I like it. It's a classic. I never get tired of the song. I think it's a wonderful song.
It's great. How about that lick? Down, 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 down,
Come
down.
on.
It's so Skinnerdy, right? It's
It's
just
so Skinnerdy.
oh yeah, it's so good.
And I will say this, the I know we both mentioned how good the playing is on both records, but I think this record has better riffs
Oh yeah, yeah, I would agree.
as compared to the second record.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
One Good Man, we've got another soulful track, kind of reminds me of Blackfoot, and that's not a bad thing.
No, not at
It
all.
rocks a bit more towards the end.
Yeah,
Eventually it works into this guitar workout where it's just bombastic. I love the guitars on this record. I love the way the guitars sound. I love how everybody's interacting with everyone.
do you think One Good Man is this album's Freebird? Kind of, even though it's not.
Kinda. Uh, I think it would be a good contender.
Yeah,
And then we talked about riffs. Opportunity starts off with another great riff. The whole track is just full of great playing I wrote on here. Getaway is another 7-minute track. Stellar. Long jams. The playing's great.
yeah. That's one of the two Freebird contenders on this one.
Yeah, but
One Good Man
man,
and Getaway. Yeah, just both great, both great.
can these guys play? I'm kind of drawing a blank, but who's doing all the slide work? Was that
That's Gary.
Alan?
It's Gary.
Gary's the slide guy.
Yeah, yeah,
So good, man.
yeah, yeah,
Winners and Losers, another great track. This is traditional Leonard Skinner. What I wrote on my notes. This is traditional Leonard Skinner. Bluesy slide guitars tracks picks up during the guitar solo, and then it switches over to tasty piano playing from Billy. Dale is using really in her alto range. She's right in there, and
yeah.
I love it. She can, but she has so much emotion. It's just there's not quite as much emotion on the second record like there is here. They're
Yeah.
just so inspired. And then at the end, slide guitar, Gary's slide just leads out the rest of the track. Winners and losers, great. You like traditional Leonard Skinner? You'll like this.
Yeah.
Misery Loves Company, I could hear that as a single. Great, memorable riff. And again, Dale, I wish I could critique Dale, but I can't. She's just wonderful. Um, what's the final track? Sometimes you can't put out love. Well, yeah. Sometimes you can't put it out.
Yep.
More of the same. Great drum break. Band sounds great. Turned into a jam. It's a jammy record. You like playing. Good way to end the record. It makes the listener look forward to that second album.
Yeah.
Um, and of course, got to get it straight, delivers, but the rest of the album doesn't quite. There's some other things on there that are good, but
Yeah. I think
what's your thoughts on it?
one of the things about the first album that I don't think you get enough of on the second album, and I always, and again, it's a weird way to describe music, but like there's something about like the classic Skinner stuff. It's swampy. It's like Southern Louisiana swamp, bluesy, boogie, country, hard rock, just kind of, it just sounds like if you were to take a bunch of guys and some amps and a generator and go play on the shores of a swamp and what it's just with this feel. This whole album has it. It's got piss and vinegar. It's energetic. There's groove to it. There's something about this album. All these little qualities that on the surface maybe aren't readily apparent, but when you listen to the second album, very little of that's there. Like
Mhm.
there's just, I mean, you did a great job of kind of talking about the essence of a lot of these songs, and there's a grittiness to this album that is an emotion that's lacking on the second album. Even though the second album has some fine stuff, like we've said, but it's not on this level by any means. I mean, some of my favorites, I don't Misunderstand Me is a great
Oh,
single. It was such a great song to hear on the radio. And you're right. That was all over the radio in the early '80s for at least a year after this album was released. And then, psh, do you ever hear this band on
no, it's one of
this
those
album?
tracks that should be, at least with today's FM rock rate. Of course, it's all run by Clear Channel.
Yeah.
It's all, yeah, we don't want to get in charge of
Yeah, we
that.
get the
We
same
don't want
like
to,
six Leonard Skinner songs that they play to death, and that's it. But
and
like,
that's all you'll ever get.
yeah, it's
Why
which,
can't you get this?
yeah, I don't know. That's so
Great
great. I
song.
mean, Prime Time is great. I love Getaway. I love One Good Man. I mean, Misery Loves Company. I mean, the whole album, start to finish, is an absolute home run. And, we haven't even mentioned it, but look at that damn album cover. I
Yeah,
remember when that thing came out. I remember I saw that in the store and I was like, woo, look at that. I mean, it's just so
it would
strong.
make Grand Funk cry.
Right? The phoenix rising out of the ashes. I
Mark
mean, that's
Farner sit there and go, well, look at that album cover.
Mark, if you're watching, it was a pleasure talking to you the other day. But and I know Grant's looking forward to having a conversation with him
Oh,
soon.
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is just an absolute home run of an album that is and should be looked at as one of the top Southern rock albums
I
of this
agree.
time period. Because the sad truth is that once the '80s kicked in, Skinner no more. 38 Special does great in the '80s, but like Molly Hatchet's albums start coming down in quality and they start moving into non-Southern rock type things. Blackfoot still doing pretty good around this time, but Blackfoot also has a rough go of it in the mid '80s. We can go on and on. There's so many other bands we can talk about, but this album and even the second album to an extent sounds like a classic '70s Southern rock album.
Yeah.
It's
It
not permeated with all these '80s synths and weird production values trying to take the essence of what Southern rock is all about. No, they both sound like they came from like 3 or 4 years prior, which I think is a good thing.
That's a good thing because by 1986, everything was just bombastic and overproduced, too much production, too much gated drums. This, you're 100% right. This sounds like a 70s record, and thank God for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So
But
yeah,
you listen to 38 Special, though, I must mention, they handled the 80s rather well.
they
It
figured it
wasn't
out.
until the
Yeah,
later 80s they got pretty commercial.
yeah,
But even those records, though, there's always something in that catalog that's worthwhile,
yeah.
you know?
I mean, the one good thing about 38 Special is they were just expert songwriters, and I think they knew how to write catchy hooks and still have plenty of kick-ass guitars and that Southern rock essence. I mean, I mean, 38 Special were kind of like on a league of their own as far as that goes. And I think so many of the other Southern rock bands wanted that success that 38 Special were having, but they didn't know how to
They,
do it. It's like,
well, they couldn't write the
let's
songs like they could.
well,
They
they can't
knew
write
how
the
to write a
songs.
hook and they knew how to make a commercial single that would take off.
Yeah, it's like you have to have the songwriting chops. You can't forget that you have two or three guitar players, right? You got to stay away from the synthesizers and you got to stay away from the programmed drums because otherwise you're not a Southern rock band. That's the one thing that was always great about 38 Special is they wrote killer, ultra memorable songs, but there was plenty of guitar firepower even on the big hits of theirs, right? You got Carlisi playing those great
Oh,
guitars. I mean, there's no shortage of guitar playing on those classic 38 Special records. But you look at like Molly Hatchet and Blackfoot and Doc Holliday and all these other, even the Johnny Van Zant band for a while. They wanted to have hit albums, so they tempered all that was so great about Southern rock to try and get a hit record, and the results in most cases were horrible.
Mhm.
Go figure, right?
Well, 38 Special, when I saw them on the 80s cruise and they interviewed them, they basically were patterning themselves after the Beatles. They wanted to do Beatle type songs, something catchy, memorable. That's what they were into. They
Yeah,
were Beatle fans.
yeah,
Well, I think that they did a perfect job in combining Southern rock and, well, Beatlesque melodies. Not saying that they are Beatlesque memories, but melodies, but you get what I'm trying to say.
yeah.
Catchy, memorable songs. They did it perfectly. There you go, ladies and gentlemen. We went on 38 Special tangent.
Yes. See that? It's all in the family, right? So so yeah, there you have it, everybody. Again, a quick little ranking of a two album catalog, but more importantly, I think it's just an excuse to talk about this kind of often forgotten band. So Rossington Collins Band, we just ranked the two. Let us know what you think of this band and the albums down in the comments below. Be interested to get people's perspective on the debut and the follow-up. And if you only know the debut, well, now's a good chance to go listen to This Is the Way. Let us know what you think down below, right? So, yes, it is possible to do two album rankings, and we're going to do another one next week. So, tune in next week where we're going to talk about the band Dillinger. For all you folks who loved our show on The Hunt a couple months ago, we are now going to do the exact same thing. We're going to talk about the two Dillinger albums, the band before The Hunt from Canada. Who's talking about these obscure Canadian bands? Nobody.
Nobody, but we
Nobody.
are.
It's we are. So before we let everybody go, Grant, what's happening over on the warehouse? And
Oh my gosh, we got all kinds of things coming up. I can't think of anything off the top of my head, but we just did a show last night. Someone you might want to check it out. Well, actually, it would be on Friday. We did our top 10 tracks of Three Dog Night. Now, I must say, Pete, after doing that show and going through that Three Dog Night catalog, well, for instance, like this Good Comp, my goodness gracious, there's some great stuff on Three Dog Night records.
a lot of deep cuts, right? Yeah,
A
that's
lot of deep cuts, and no one's talking Three Dog Night, but we're talking Three Dog Night in the warehouse. So please go over there and check that out. And we had some obscure stuff. We didn't just pick like Joy to the World, though it was mentioned, but that's also another catalog that I don't think anybody really talks about. And they were huge in the 70s.
they were. Yeah.
You remember when you were a kid in elementary school, you probably had a music teacher and they probably went around with their piano. You guys probably sang Joey to the World,
Oh, we did.
but you did
Yeah, we had chorus class. Yeah.
at course. And you did several Three Dog Night songs. They were huge on the AM radio
Yeah.
and highly recommend checking that catalog. You'll be surprised.
How many albums did
Uh,
they have? Not a lot, right?
there's probably, we only went up to like, I think that there's probably eight, maybe eight or nine.
Yeah, I thought there was a
A lot of
10.
those later records, they kind of petered out.
Yeah, yeah.
A
Yeah,
lot of drugs,
oh, for
a lot of
sure.
a lot
Yeah.
of substance abuse.
Yeah, yeah.
They
Yeah,
they
that's one of those bands that like again for me has always been a greatest hits band and I've always really liked them, but I've had lots of people say, "Hey, you should look a little deeper because there's a lot of really good as all these bands are, right? You know, you start to get past the hits and you're thinking, "Oh, wow, this there was a lot more to this than Joy in the World," right?
everybody should go back and check out our Bread episode that we did,
That's
gosh,
another
6 months
great.
ago. That's another band. Yeah, a singles band, but those albums have a lot more than just the singles. They're
Yeah,
a rocking band.
yeah, yeah. I mean, shit,
Check them out.
The Poco episode we just did. I mean, that's a perfect example. I mean, that I had an absolute blast diving into those albums really for the first time
Such
ever
good
and
players.
going beyond
Such good
compilations.
players.
Oh, yeah, so good. So good. So, yeah,
But there you go.
there you go.
More
So
stuff
stay
on the
tuned.
Contrarians. There's more coming.
That's right. As always, what do we got coming up here on the channel? We'll have so of course everybody knows I'll be on vacation all next week, but we will have Hudson Valley Squares on Monday because we're actually taping it on Sunday, something we don't normally do. It's usually tape on Monday, air on Monday, but we're doing a album war battle between four thrash debut classics from Overkill, Exodus, Testament, and Annihilator. So we're doing the debut albums from all four of those in an album battle. That's happening on Monday. And then the usual stuff during the week. We'll have everything for you on the channel while I'm away. And then we'll see Grant back here next Sunday for Dillinger. Till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together all the damn
All the
time.
damn time.
Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell to get alert of all of our content as a post. And please do hit the like button before you leave. For Grant, Arthur, I am Pete Pardo. Thanks for joining us on Ranking the Albums. We'll see you next week for Dillinger. Take care. Bye-bye.
Yeah.